702.
My guest for the relationship feature today is Paula Quincy, relationship expert and life coach. And she joins us now on the line. A tricky conversation that we're having here today, just around the unemployment, how unemployment and one partner losing their work can really cause, or challenge relationships and cause strain in relationships, especially in South Africa, where unemployment is a reality for many.
Absolutely. It can have a severe impact on relationships, particularly on an emotional level and from a psychological perspective for both partners, the one that's going through or has been through the retrenchment and the one on the other side who is, having to hold the space for their partner and their relationship during this process.
I suppose, what's the first step? So I suppose someone comes home, your partner comes home and they say, listen, I've lost my job or I run the risk of being retrenched and it may happen sooner than we think. What do we do? What's the first thing a couple does in that instance?
I think, like any human being, we kind of kick into survival mode because it's the shock of this, it's the disbelief, it's the betrayal that we're going through, and it's that sort of grieving process that we go through from both sides. The person that's gone through this retrenchment is grappling with a whole lot of emotional stuff around their worthiness, a sense of failure, their anxiety, particularly from a financial perspective, because that financial stress and strain has a direct impact on our survival skills. How am I going to pay the bills at the end of the month? How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to provide? And so we go into this panic and this anxiety as all of these thoughts and emotions flood over us, as the partner going through it, but also the partner on the other side that is trying to be supportive, but is also going through their own emotional turmoil in the process.
And how important is it to just pause and take it in? Once you hear whatever news, any shocking news, anything that you feel might be, it runs the risk of affecting your relationship. I think it's wise to pause and just process what this means, at least in the immediate, before, spiraling and panicking and going into that survival mode.
Absolutely. As hard as it is to be able to just, stop and not make rash emotional decisions. The most important thing is for you as an individual and as a couple to, as you say, take that pause and allow yourself to feel what you are going through. It's not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing to suppress those emotions or to deny what you're feeling. And to be able to allow yourself to absorb and go, okay, this is what has happened to me. That doesn't mean that I am a failure, because failure is an event, not a person. And often we interpret this as a sense of failure or relating directly to our worth. So being able to have a safe space to lean into, whether it's your partner or whether it's someone else, to say, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's pause. Let's breathe. Okay, this has happened. This may feel like the end of the world right now, but it's not necessarily the end of the world. So let's not make rash emotional decisions. Let's step into it and let's then sit down and unpack step by step what we can do, what is available to us with our resources, who we can lean into, and how we can, kind of put a plan of action in place, as opposed to slipping into a dark space of depression and anxiety and overwhelm and all of those things.
Yeah. And what is it about romantic relationships that makes it feel like, this relationship is going into a crisis when the one person loses their job? Because, unemployment affects us all, and it affects all types of relationships, whether it's with your family, your even friends, depending on the relationship type that you have. But when it comes to romantic relationships, it seems as though you just feel like my relationship is at risk once the one person loses their job.
Yes, absolutely, because it does affect moods on both sides. It brings tension and anxiety into the relationship and into the relational space. So it can affect our communication between each other. Normally we would turn towards each other and share intimate things, share our fears, our hopes, our dreams. But when crisis really hits, this is one thing couples don't really sit down and talk about, is how will we handle and manage a situation when crisis hits us? How will I respond? How will I react? What do you need from me? How can I show up for you? How can I be there for you? Until it actually happens and we're thrown into crisis. And so there's mood swings that can happen. There's negative behaviors that we can turn to, for example, alcohol, to try, and cope and deal with the situation. We can shut down, we can withdraw, we can, exit the relationship. In other words, we turn away from our partner as opposed to turning towards our partner to try and cope and deal with this.
And it's also got something to do with how our work and our careers, form part of our personalities. For some people, the fact that I'm a doctor is my entire personality. It's who I am. And I don't think of myself or know myself outside of Dr. Khomotso.
Absolutely correct. It gives us a sense of identity. We define ourselves through labels. So the label that we often use to define ourselves, because, when we're in social situations or conversations, one of the common things is, well, so what do you do? And we talk about our work environment, and that gives us a sense of identity. And now that identity is gone. And that purpose we have of getting up and going somewhere every day and contributing something of value or worth is gone. So our sense of purpose is gone. So we're struggling with these things now around my identity and who am I and what is my value and my worth and my contribution to this world, because I don't have it anymore. And then there's also that sense of structure, that daily routine that has been shaken up and taken away from me, as, in terms of getting up and going to work and then coming home from work, which signals our sort of career identity and our day-to-day identity and routine.
We're speaking about, how one partner losing their job or employment can affect the relationship, the burden on their partner, after they've lost their job. Someone else saying on the WhatsApp line, "Hi, Khomotso, my partner of almost 3 years lost his job in 2024 December. I tried to support by not exerting pressure, asking very little, checking in now and again. But the main thing was I was trying to give him space and not exerting pressure. Unfortunately, that was seen by him as not caring, not supporting, and the relationship ended last month." Oh, I'm so sorry about that. And this is the reality, right, Paula? The fact that it's so difficult. You don't know. You try to say, okay, let me not do too much. Let me not ask for too much, and just give the person a bit of space and not pressurize him in any way. And then they read that as you just not caring.
That's where I said, it's important for couples to have these conversations around, when you're going through a crisis, how do you need me to be there for you? How do you need me to show up for you? How can I support you? Because often, and particularly from a woman's perspective, we will step into fix-it mode. We will want to fix this person that we care about, we love about them, we see them hurting, and we want to take it away because we are naturally nurturers, right? And that can have a negative impact. Sometimes we feel, well, okay, we don't want to impose, and so we want to take that step back, like that previous message and from a caller. And so that can come across as the opposite. Well, you don't care. I'm going through all of this and I feel alone and lonely, like I'm not getting any support from you at all. But it's also where the person that is going through this, as much as it is difficult for them to articulate what they're going through and experiencing, it's even more difficult for them to express their needs around, this is what I need, or this is what I want from you, or this is how I need you to show up for me. And this is where couples can benefit from going and seeking a professional or therapist to help them work through this crisis together, so that it brings them closer together as opposed to pushing them further apart.
And how do you read the signs from your partner, especially in instances where the communication isn't verbal and it's not upfront? How can one go about reading the signs that, okay, maybe at this point, this person needs me maybe to just hold them, and just to be quiet and just sit next to them? Or no, now maybe I should do something. Maybe I should buy. Maybe, it's so difficult to navigate it, because at some point you don't know how to read them.
Correct. And that's where I think, you can pay attention to your partner's moods or personality. So if they shut down and if they seem withdrawn from you or they're not communicating with you, to actually share this, say, look, I've noticed or I've observed lately that, you've become very quiet. You're not really talking to me anymore. I know that you're going through stuff and I want to respect your space. But at the same time, I want you to know that I am there for you and I do care about you and I want to help you. But I need to know how you need me to help you because I don't want to add to the pressure that I can imagine you are already feeling or experiencing.
It's our relationship hour. We're speaking about navigating a relationship where one partner loses their job. I know for many people that can be such a difficult time in the relationship. You get to see a side of your partner that you may not have known and that you may not have seen. And for some people, they would have rather never seen that side of the partner. That's due to the frustration that's been caused by this shift. And so we're having the conversation about how to navigate that. If you've experienced that or if you're currently going through it, I'm taking your calls on 011-883-0702. I'm also taking your WhatsApps on 072-702-1702. We continue with this conversation after this.
The whole thing of partners losing their jobs, people need to start changing a mindset shift. And I'm just going to say it for what it is. In most cases, when a partner has lost their jobs, it's mostly women who have a problem with this thing. If under the man has lost his job, then suddenly the romance in the relationship ceases to exist. They'll start having a gap a distance in between the two of them. She'll start seeing him as being ineffective. Whereas when a woman has lost his job, her job, a man just continue as it is, and he continues supporting her. He doesn't put pressure on her. Whereas with women, when a man has lost his job, they start putting pressure on him, asking, when are you getting another job? Hostility starts to build up in a relationship. So there needs to be a mindset shift, actually. That's how these things will be resolved.
Thank you so much for that voice note, Sammy. I appreciate that. Hey, it's the romance. I think you're introducing an important element to this because you're right, it then affects the romance in the relationship. Paula, Sammy is introducing a really interesting element to this, and that's the romance element. The fact that once one partner loses their job, he says when it's the man who loses the job, then all of a sudden the partner or the wife, the woman is not very attracted to them anymore. The romance dwindles, and then the relationship just collapses.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it depends on the quality and the health of your relationship. If you're just in a relationship for the money or the financial ability that your partner can provide, that's not a strong enough reason to keep a relationship alive and thriving. Yes, money does help in a relationship. It does help you live a lifestyle. It does help you do things together as a couple. But that's not the only reason, why you should be together in a relationship. One thing that unemployment does test is it tests the trust in a relationship and the communication and the connection in a relationship. And I think that is potentially the thing that starts, becoming sort of trembling in a situation like this, especially if couples don't communicate with each other and create that safe space where they can lean into each other. And then we start making all sorts of assumptions about our partner and our relationship.
How can people manage the power dynamics in their relationship now that there's been this shift? In many relationships, the man who is employed, maybe even making more or making the same as the wife, is almost seen and considered to be the leader in that relationship. But now, because the financial power and the financial muscle is no longer there, that may look different. How can couples manage that in a way that still keeps harmony and peace in the relationship?
I think this is where we need to challenge those sort of typical the gender stereotyping and the labels where the man is the provider and the breadwinner, especially in today's world, because we're seeing that change where, women are earning equal or more to some of their male counterparts. So if we just look at this from a gender stereotyping point of view, the stigma associated with the man who is supposed to be the provider and the breadwinner, when he loses his job, it takes that away from him. Or the perception is that it's been taken away from him, and he is no longer able to provide. He's no longer able to add value to his family and or his community and society around him. And that's not necessarily true, because you are more than just money when it comes to your relationship. Our relationship consists of 5 different elements or pillars, of which financial is one of those pillars. Yeah. And this is a conversation that couples can have, is what are the different ways that we contribute to our relationship on an emotional level, on a physical doing level, so acts of service or chores and that, on a physical level, so from a sexual side of our relationship, the financial side of our relationship, and then the spiritual side of our relationship. Those are the different channels or ways through which we contribute to a relationship. And you and your relationship is more than just the financial aspect.
We're speaking about navigating your relationship when one partner loses their job. Have you felt a shift in your relationship? Maybe you started to feel less wanted, less desired by your partner once, you no longer had the financial muscle. Have you felt that the power has now shifted in your relationship, where the partner who maybe was not, so powerful, or, you were more of the leader in the relationship, now you feel like you're being led for whatever reason, or because of the situation? I'm taking your calls.
Hi, Fumutso. I just have a question for Paula. Me and my partner, we've been together for about 10 months now, and things have been going good. However, my partner has lost their job 2 months, I think. For 2 months, they haven't had a job now, and everything is fine. We've communicated. He doesn't want me to financially support him in any way. He says he has that under control. He's looking for a job, and he has that under control. So that's fine. We've been doing good, but we haven't gone on dates now for about 2 months, and it's put a strain on the relationship. And I've just been wondering, if I should take him out on dates or what, or will he not like that because, he usually took care of that part, but now we haven't been doing that part of our relationship on going out on dates and stuff. So maybe please help me, Paula.
Sure. Thank you so much for that voice note. Paula, I don't know if you were able to hear that. It's I think it speaks to the reality of how the relationship will change. It's inevitable that it will change in one way or another because the one partner no longer has the financial muscle.
Yes, correct. And it's great that they are communicating about this. So potentially this partner, the one that lost their job, is feeling a little bit self-conscious or self-aware and is maybe a little bit more conservative where it comes to spending money. So what I would say is, approach it in a way that is open and say, for example, I miss us time and, spending quality time with you. What about we go and we have a picnic somewhere, in the park, or even in your garden outside, or on your lounge floor, and put some music on and make it a little bit romantic. So you're taking the pressure off from a financial way, and you're finding creative other ways of having date time together. Yeah. That's where you can still enjoy and share quality time together.
I suppose also it's the reality for some couples that we were used to fine dining. We were used to, living large, and I always knew every month you were going to take me to the best restaurant in Johannesburg, and we were going away on holidays, and you were footing the bill, and now all of a sudden that's all gone away, and it's a bit of a shock to the system.
This is part of the conversation that couples need to have, which is, what are the lifestyle changes we may possibly have to make for this period of time while we are on a single income, or while we have less disposable income available to us, and finding creative ways of doing other things together until you're back in that position again where you can live that fine dining lifestyle, if that's what you choose to live.
Let's go to the lines. And Nkululeko in Krugersdorp, you want to weigh in. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Khomuto. Thanks for having me. Mine is a different story.
Yeah.
I lost my job, and a week later, I discovered that my now wife is pregnant.
Sure.
But the funny thing or interesting is that she was always there. Nothing changed. I remember I would walk to her place to fetch her. We'd get home and make her eggs in arch. She was always there. 10 years later, we are doing very well. Got our second house now. The child is growing, attending to good schools. But I think the issue here is that if someone wants to be with you, they will be with you, depending on the job or not.
Yeah.
But if they are there for the money and all that, the dynamics will change. But if they want to be in that relationship, they will be in that relationship no matter what's happening.
And in the beginning, was it as easy in the beginning, or did you have to almost transition and figure it out?
Yes, we needed to transition. The lifestyle changed because I also lost my car. They're walking around now using taxis. Back then there was no Bolt. We had to learn to live in a different way that will accommodate that now. The lifestyle has to change. There's no going out anymore. If we want to spend time, we're at home. So we had to learn.
And if I may ask, Nkululeko, how did those around you respond and react to this? Your family and friends. You know, some family and friends may be like, they are naysayers. No, he's useless now. No, he can't take care of you. How was the response from those around you?
On my end, they were amazed because she was always there. But on her end, things were different because you would get those things because when the child was born, we would walk to the hospital and it's a distance. So you'd hear people saying, no, she doesn't even have a car, this and that. And that used to frustrate me a lot because I could see that she's taking strain from those people who are saying these things. But we like I said, we had to learn, and we also had to understand ourselves. Why are we in this relationship? The next person can say something, but why are we in this relationship? I think that worked for us. That's why now we are still going strong.
Thank you so much for your call, Nkululeko, and I wish you all of the best. I hope you continue to grow from strength to strength and continue to be very happy with your wife.
Thank you so much, Khomuto. Have a great one.
All right. I think that this is an example of a success story, Paula, right? People that have it figured out, that did it right, that understood that they had to make some changes, that understood, that things would not be the same, but also that were willing to go the mile, that were willing to continue with the journey, and it's paid off.
Absolutely, and this is a good example of, where couples pull together, they turn towards each other, they're there for each other, they show up for each other. And, I think it's important to remember that going through something like this is not a jail sentence. There's such a stigma attached to losing your job, the shame, the embarrassment, all of those things. But it happens all the time around the world. And, I think the more that we talk about these things and that it's okay, that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that your life has changed and it's for now, it's not forever. So how do we get through this for now? What are the things that we can do for now to get through this together side by side and come out on the other side stronger than before?
Absolutely. Let's take some of your voice notes.
Hi guys, this conversation about jobs and the change in dynamics, for me it's a touchy one because my ex-husband left his job to start his own business, which he didn't stick to, and he would chop and change as the mood goes. I became the sole breadwinner for 11 years without any help. And all I wanted was just an equal, someone who's going to carry 50% of the load just as much as I did. It got to a point where I resented him because he could opt in. He could opt in parenting. He could opt in providing, he could opt in and protecting. Like, everything was just as he wished, and he would just go with the flow. And it got to a point where, I lost all respect. I resented him. I really had to leave because it wasn't working out at all.
Sure. Paula, this is a little different one because this is a partner who left his job to go and start a business.
Yes, correct. And I think, this is the key thing around where couples need to sit down and go, what are the different ways that you can show up and contribute in the relationship that is not financially related? So could you take on more roles and responsibilities when it comes to the household chores or the parenting or the cooking? How can you help ease the load so that it seems fair, that it's not just one-sided, which is what it can end up happening, like in this situation where the partner was carrying the financial load, potentially feeling like they were carrying the parenting and the emotional load, and ended up feeling alone and lonely in the relationship, like they didn't have a partner, an equal partner there, to go through and work through all of these things together. And that's when resentment can creep in. And when resentment creeps in, that's often when one heads down that downward spiral.
Sure. Yeah. The resentment word is an important one. It's difficult because at sometimes, people don't realize how resentful they are towards their partner initially. And, sometimes you go on in this relationship unhappy, and only much later do you then, become aware and alive to the fact that you've harbored so much resentment that could have been worked through or could have been addressed if it was realized sooner. All right, let's take another voice note.
Good morning. I can understand exactly where Anonymous is coming from, the one that's talking about her ex-husband. I had the same situation. My ex-husband was in business. Business started going very badly, but he was dishonest. I think that was the main thing that caused the demise of the relationship. He became so dishonest, and I was the sole breadwinner, and I remember him knowing my payday, and he would ask for money. And he would say, because money was tight, obviously, and he would say, I'd give it back before debit orders. But then he wouldn't. And when I'd ask for it, he'd say, did you see me waking up and going to work? Where do you think that money is going to come from? But meanwhile, debit orders are waiting for us. And he became just so dishonest about everything he was doing. He ended up pawning my car, pawning my phone. The marriage ended not because he didn't have money, but because he was dishonest.
Sure. And I think that's important, hey, Paula. The fact that, yes, you might be going through this, but being honest with your partner and playing open cards can really save your relationship.
Absolutely. And, that's where vulnerability actually builds trust and intimacy. And when I say intimacy, I'm talking about emotional connection, not sexual. But it can impact the sexual side of a relationship too. And this is where couples being vulnerable enough and being honest enough to have these conversations, to hold that person accountable. You promised to pay this back before the debit orders, and now the money's not there. And you're actually putting us and or me at risk because I can't pay these debit orders, which is going to impact our house, our car, or our lives in a very real way with real consequences. And so being able to have these honest conversations and managing these expectations that are being created, whether it's real or perceived, so how can you also share how you're feeling with the partner that's been retrenched in terms of how you're feeling about carrying the load or having to be responsible or having to now, be the financial provider, and the stress and the impact that it's putting on you as well.
And I suppose also it's the creating an environment of trust, the fact that I can trust you as my partner. And yes, we're going through this, but I can trust you as the person who's lost the job. I can trust you with my emotions. I can trust you with my feelings. But also the person who's now carrying us financially should be able to trust you enough to be honest, should be able to trust you enough to be upfront and direct.
Correct. And that's where that vulnerability comes in. The ability to open yourself up and expose yourself and be vulnerable, we often shy away from that because we think that that's going to, expose us as to who we are and our weaknesses, but that is not actually true. It is through being vulnerable that we create that trust. Because if you create a safe enough space for your partner to be able to feel safe enough to be open and vulnerable with you, that is where the trust is built in a relationship.
Oh, let's take another voice note. I think we've got another one.
Lovely show. Partnership. Modern day adult romantic relationships are really falling short on partnership. And I would even advise anyone who's looking to start a relationship, do not settle for anything that falls short of partnership, or else what you're talking about today will become a reality. Relationships become very strained when we are not sharing the load, when we are not sharing the load of suffering, and when we are not sharing the load of building.
Hello, Komodo and your guest. Thank you for the topic. I want to find out, how do we have conversations with particularly men, and how to remove or separate their value as individuals with the value that they contribute financially? How do you then get men to re-identify themselves as contributors in more ways than just financially? And that interaction between a man and a woman, how does society change that particular interaction so that when one sees themselves as a man, they don't only identify themselves as a contributor of just money to the table, but also values, spiritual health, raising the children, and all those are equally the same.
Yeah, thank you so much for that voice note. I suppose it's what we've been speaking about, Paula, about, revisiting and doing away with some of those stereotypes, and the idea, maybe I shouldn't say of roles, because roles are important, but those stereotypical roles.
You're absolutely correct. And the more examples we have of men that have the courage to speak up and be role models and mentors for other men out there that go, hey, that sounds like me, I can relate to that. If that person is going through it and they came through it on the other side, then so can I. And so the more safe spaces we create for men to lean into, to be able to break those gender stereotyping stigmas, the more healthier relationships we will have out there. So it's for men to speak up and speak out and create safe spaces for other men, as well as how they teach our boy children to grow up in today's world. And at the same time, for women to be allies to men and create safe spaces for men to be vulnerable in without them feeling like they're losing their manhood in the process.
Yep, that's the reality, really. And it's the fact that, in South Africa, so many men are among those who do lose their jobs, who do end up unemployed and don't know how to define themselves and be able to be active participants in the home, active participants in the relationship, and take on whatever role is required of them during the season in their lives. All right. We are still taking some of your calls and your voice notes. I see your voice notes coming in thick and fast. Let's go to one right now.
I just want to speak on the issue of vulnerability to create trust. What a complex matter. But just thinking about my own situation where I was vulnerable and then my then partner kind of abused that, to ridicule, to kind of say, what kind of a man are you, So that throws a spanner to the vulnerability dialogue. Say, okay, it takes two, not just men being vulnerable, it's also women allowing men to be human and not these robots that we are brought up to be.
Paula, yeah, this is another important one. The fact that when your partner is vulnerable, when they do take that leap and want to trust you with themselves or the most intimate parts of themselves, and then you break that trust and you ridicule them and you mock them in their vulnerability.
Absolutely correct. And, that's where I mentioned earlier on that women can be allies to men in this process. Women often say they wish their men would open up and speak to them more and let them in so they know what's going on in their worlds and what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And if they want to achieve that, they need to co-create the safe space and hold space for a man to lean into and be vulnerable in a way that feels supportive, that feels caring, that feels respectful, not what this caller, shared, where he was made to feel ridiculed and judged, because all that does is shut someone down and they withdraw even more, and it will be even more difficult for them to open up and be vulnerable again.
We're still taking more of your voice notes. Let's try get through as many of them as we can. Let's take a listen.
The real test of a relationship is when we don't get what we want as opposed to when we do.
I mean, Paula, what is it that causes respect to take a knock in some relationships when one partner loses the job? Is it the fact that the other partner may feel and know now that I make more than you, I've got more financial power than you? What is it?
I think it's unmet expectations, right? Or unspoken expectations. We either say something which creates an expectation, and when it's not followed through on, it creates disappointment, which feels like I'm let down, I can't rely on you, I can't depend on you. And on the other hand, when, the expectation is not spoken, we think these things, or we have this expectation of how our partner should respond, or how we want them to respond, or how we think they'll be there for us. And when they don't measure up to that expectation, we feel let down and disappointed. But in actual fact, we set them up for failure in the first place because we did not voice our expectations or our needs, and therefore they couldn't have met it anyway. It was unrealistic, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's these unmet expectations that create this disappointment, this trust. It breaks the trust, and that I can rely on you and depend on you to be there for me. And then that's when resentment creeps in.
And I suppose now that you may have realized and you've taken note of some of the things that we've covered in this conversation, what can one do to repair the damage that may have been caused in the relationship due to this? So, some listeners may not have known that they were being financially abusive, may not have known that they have lost respect for their partners, and they realize now that maybe they'd gone about things the wrong way. What can you do to try fix things?
The best thing to do would be to sit down with your partner and relate back to that experience in a way that is open and engaging and wanting to gain understanding and insight as opposed to the upper hand. So, for example, you could say to your partner, when we were going through this, this is how I felt, this is what I was going through, and this is what I really needed from you back then. And I realize now that I didn't voice that, I didn't express it, and this is how it's left me feeling. So going forward, next time we go through a difficult time, this is a step that I'm willing to do from my side. What I would like or need from you is this. Can we talk about this? And start rebuilding that bridge of connection, of safety, of communication, of connection and trust.
And I suppose finally, Paula, at what point should couples consider getting outside help, therapy? At what point should they say this might be more than we can take, more than we can do? Let's go get some help.
I think that couples should look at getting help regardless of the situation that they're in. I always like to use the car analogy. Every year we take our car in for an annual service to make sure it's roadworthy and reliable and dependable and safe. Why not do the same for our relationships? As we grow and evolve in our relationship shifts and changes, why not invest in our relationship and go and learn new skills that we can be better partners for each other, better communication skills, dealing with anger, conflict, all those things. And I think the minute you feel like you are disconnected from your partner and you've tried to connect and stop getting anywhere, don't wait until it's too late. Go and get the help. It's not a shame in today's world to get help.
Paula Quincy, relationship expert and life coach. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your insights.